This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. Avoid the maze. Well, we really can't avoid life, and that's what the maze is all about. But we can help each other sort of maneuver through it when we hear each other's stories. And today I have the Podfather on with me. His name is Roy Coughlin, and I would read your bio, but it certainly would not give you the justice that you need. You have just been a little bit of everything throughout your life, and you have found your pinnacle. So tell me a little bit about who you really are, Roy.
Well, thanks very much, Karen, for having me on the show. So I'm from Cork in Ireland originally and currently living in Łódź in Poland. And I suppose I grew up in a kind of rough neighborhood, so fighting nearly every day, cars, joyriders, burning cars up and things like that. So witness it was a tough upbringing. And at 9, I started washing cars and delivering leaflets. At 11, I started doing a newspaper round, and I'd done that up to college. Then when I was 14, from the money from the newspapers, I bought a lawnmower and I used to go around cutting grass. When I was 18, I was buying motorbikes. So I'd buy a motorbike, paint it, or do the wiring, do it up a bit and sell it, make a couple of $100 in a couple of days. So that was good. And I studied construction economics and management in the regional technical college in the city that I'm from. So I got a diploma in that. And actually, when I finished, it was 93, and there was no jobs. I mean, we call them Dear John letters. So, applying for everything. And you think, after spending 3 years in college, and there wasn't many people where I lived going to college. It was just kind of environment. And I expected to walk into something decent, and I got a rude awakening. So then I had to do a city kind of course. It was construction site supervision. And when I went there, I suppose it was seeing fraud in the government level for the first time, because when you went there, they were just doing all Foxers. So it was like all different people from college. So there was a kind of high education there. And they were getting us to do like designing houses and do all projects, and we weren't getting paid for it. This wasn't government. Yeah. So one of the ones that I had done was something in the building. It was like quantity surveying. And I just didn't like the way it was, but there was a computer there. And I told your man, I said, buy me the AutoCAD book and I learn it. And what I did is I sat down and I opened page 1 and I went through the whole, I remember it was about 400 or 500 pages, but I actually got very competent at AutoCAD from not knowing anything. So then I got work experience in the city, in the council, doing road design. So there was a load of architects there, but AutoCAD was kind of new. And there was people that were working all their life were trying to switch over to this. And they were all coming to me for experience, but the money was terrible. It was like £100 a week. And it was like, you couldn't, yeah. So then I got a job in a different city with one of the biggest mechanical contractors. And I started off doing AutoCAD, and eventually got promoted, and then I was running jobs. So I was working as a contracts manager. I was with that company for something like 8.5 years. And then later with another mechanical and electrical contractor for 3 years, 3.5 years. And while I was working with that last company, I had met a Polish girl and went to visit our parents. And I said, oh, property's okay here. Started investing, got a few. And I had 3 properties at that stage in Ireland. And then I kind of saw an opportunity, because like 2004, everybody was buying. It was just when people were going kind of buying properties without even looking at it. So I was selling, I started doing it, and I didn't leave my job. I went down to 3 days, and I was like 1 week of a month going to Poland. The relationship ended, but she said, look, I'll just stay in Poland and you stay in Ireland and then come over and whatever. So I was getting a load of clients. I was doing BNI meetings, and it was working out well. We were buying syndicates for commercial. So I released equity in my properties to buy into some of the things. And I was the small buy. There was some of the investors, like they were worth 20 million euro or more. But, because of my college experience and just working in construction, I was probably a good fit for them. And then I think I had about 50 clients. The previous partner sent an email to all the clients saying that she set up her own company and that we're no longer working together. That was the first time I saw the email. And like, I knew I would have lost everything if I didn't move out there. So I made the decision then, moved to Poland. And as it turned out, she got one of the clients because she forgot it's all about relationships. And, not everyone is loyal to the dollar. So
Right,
that was a good thing. And I ended up building a big business because originally it was selling a property, but then people wanted it fit out. We can do that. They wanted it renovated. We can do that. We wanted it let. We can do that. We want to find tenants. We can do that. So I ended up having a load of businesses from it, and I was doing very well. So then the crash happened. Like, it was 08 in America. It kind of took a bit time to come across, but the Irish people then got wiped out. And I I thought this is a hiccup because nobody expected it to be so bad. We
sure,
we hadn't witnessed that. And I thought, look, this is going to come right. So say a commercial, I put in an extra 150,000. I said, look, I'll charge you 10% interest a year. And if you can't pay me, I'll just increase my shareholding. And they were all happy with that because I wanted to be loyal to them. You don't kick someone when they're done. And as it turned out, they didn't get right. Like, they took everything. One guy was a developer. The government agency, which was totally corrupt, came in and took over all their stuff, tied his hands. He lost all his properties. There was another lady, physiotherapist. They took her business. So when you take the person's business, you can't do anything.
right,
And eventually I started running out of money. And I went to the bank and I said, look, can I have interest only on the commercial? And I'll split it because I got planning permission. I'll split it into three. I'll sell it off. Oh, yeah, grand. The minute I missed the payment, bailiffs were in straight away. It was like they lied straight to my face. And my Irish properties then lost all them. They took, because there was all different, so they
right,
were my private things, but they took my own house as well with my personal belongings, but it was all done fraudulently. So usually in Poland, like, well, not Poland, but in any country, when you have a limited liability company, it's like, all right, I lost it, dust myself, let's start again.
right,
Nobody told me, I mean, the accountants or the solicitors, that you're personally liable when you're the president. So I was looking, when I was finishing all these projects, to be worth about 5 million. And I was personally liable for 5 million. And of course, the investors were gone. I was held, caught with the crying baby. And I had to kind of wingle my way through that. And I saw so much corruption. I mean, I'd seen how evil the banks were, the way they were
sure,
operating. And then the bailiffs were working in cahoots with a valuer. So, for example, the commercial property, I'll talk in dollar terms because, most people understand dollars rather than Polish zloty. So it was worth about 1.25 million dollars. And they basically, first of all, they told, don't pay me, so just pay them. They never paid the water or the electricity. So they got turned off. All the tenants left. Then, homeless people came in and started taking
right,
all the copper and no value, destroyed it. So then they valued the property at 500,000. And the way the auction works is it's 75% for the first auction, 50% for the second auction. They put up a screenshot, and this is done around the world, I found out later.
I'm sure,
So a
yeah,
screenshot, so they have proof. Hey, we did advertise it. Nobody just turned up. So nobody turns up. And then they have their cronies to try to buy it. So they were going to try to buy it themselves, a property worth 1.25 for 250,000. And thankfully, a guy bought it, which took the debt, because at that stage, that was over 500,000, would have been nearly 1 million, just that property alone. Debt to me, it would have just kept building because there was no way I would have been able to pay it.
sure,
And just through that, then it was one company, another company, like another one, they bribed everybody in the room. I was told, don't go there, because if you go there, they'll say, is there a representative from the company there? So I got good advice from not a solicitor or an accountant, but from a businessman. He told me, he went there with his mate. They gave them nearly 1,000 each. There was like 14 bidding, and they ended up having their own cronies buying it. So you're personally liable then for the excess. And this kind of thing is going on. And this is happening all around. Like in Ireland, then I was having cases in Ireland in the High Court. And like they were just taking everybody. Like one woman, they said KPMG investigated you, overcharged us €15,000 interest. When was that? 3 years ago. Oh, you should have took it up with them then. Bang, ruled in favor of the bank, plus interest, plus penalties. And I had an affidavit. I remember first time I got called into court for Ireland, I didn't even know what an affidavit was. I had to actually ask, what's an affidavit? What must I do? And the first time they went through all the process, and I was like, this is all wrong. They had all incorrect information and they just removed it. So when I went in the second time, I said, they're already after doing this because it goes to like the master or the high court to decide will it go into the main court. So you're inside in a room with like 150 different, and they're barristers, like top level. Some of these are charging, 10 grand a day.
Sure.
And I said, look, they've already taken this case. They can do it as often as they want. They've unlimited resources, like, so they don't care. And I was looking at people, like a woman holding a piece of paper, like crying. My husband died from cancer, from stress, from this. Oh, I'm very sorry. Bang, rule in favor of the bank. And like, I was 8 times there. They could never reply to my affidavit because I had them on fraud. I had 20 signatures from different people, even a different bank that they had bought out with the exact same signature, but different names. It was like there was so many things. I had shown that it went to the securities. They basically combined them all and sold them off. So they've already got paid. So that's going on around the world. And then there was, like, most people wouldn't be aware that, like, in Europe, there was like the bailouts. So all the money was like going to the banks, which in turn would be going to my property so that I don't lose them. No, they took everything and came after me for the excess. They just filled their own pockets. So there was no bailout. It was just complete fraud across the board. And like, I know you'd Lehman Brothers I heard there was people
Right.
buying stuff on 6% on the dollar. So would they sell that to the person? Because if somebody was in foreclosure, they could get 6%. They would figure a way to get, but they won't. And what they do is they sell it for like 25% of whatever, and you have to pay the remainder. So there's people paying mortgages of a property they don't even know, millions of people, and it's all fraud. And so, like, I'm kind of going to a long story. So when I said I have to expose this, because unfortunately a lot of people throw in the towel, and that frustrates me. So when I went to an event, it was, what's your quest? And I made a decision that time. I'm going to expose this. I need to expose this so more people don't fall for it. And at the time, I don't know, was I 45? I hated public speaking. Like, even when I was running these jobs in Ireland, my voice would go. Like, it was just something that I hate. And I think it came from school. When I trace it back, it was like they go around the class and make you stand up. And I'd stutter, or my brain would just freeze, like when I'm about 5 people away. And then they'd mock you, or the teacher would just embarrass people. So
Sure.
I think it probably, and like, I have a speaking podcast, and I ask people about their journey, and there's a lot of people, it's from school that they had it. So, I mean, I just kind of thought, this is who I am. But when I was there was two brilliant speakers, and I said, I need to change that. So I came back and I joined. I'll tell you how shy I was. I went to the Toastmasters, and I had to bring my friends because I couldn't go alone, of course. And I said, this is brilliant. And they said, yeah, but we don't have time. I can't do it. And I wouldn't go because I was too shy to go on my own. But a new club opened, and a few months later, and I said, okay, everyone's going to be new. I'm just going to go. They said, will you sign up? Yeah. And as it turned out, it was like half existing Toastmasters and half new people. And then they said, will you do a speech next week? And I had kind of made a decision, all right. And I thought that was not the norm. So as I'm doing the speech, I kind of froze halfway through it and kind of paused. And then the comments from existing Toastmasters were all support and well done and very funny. And all the people that weren't Toastmasters was total abuse. So a normal person would probably leave and never come back. But that just kind of fueled me to just kind of keep going further. And I ended up keeping the pieces of paper and doing a competition and getting into the five countries with the Toastmasters into the final by just using that, joking about what happened.
Sure.
I went to another Toastmaster, the one that I was afraid to go. I formed my own Toastmasters club. I was a coach, and I became a DTM within 3 years. I did an open mic TEDx. I did comedy. I just did an open mic comedy just to, just say, all right. And I was terrified, but I said, I'm doing this. And it was like, don't refuse any kind of, and I remember I spoke at Mind Valley, when was it, about 3 years ago, 2 years ago? And I wasn't even any bit nervous on the stage. And I just, compared to, previous to that, I'd say no way would I do something like that. And I've done probably 100 live podcasts, and the fear is gone. So like the main part for that is like everybody tells themselves a story, and that's your crutch in life. Forget
Right.
about the crutch. You just change the story and you make a path of how you can overcome this, and you can do anything. So like
Well,
how shy I was, I wouldn't go into a sweet shop when I was young. When I was 18, going to the bar, I wouldn't go up for my round. I just give my friend the money. That's how shy. So if you can go from that to winning competitions, you can do anything.
but what I'm finding interesting, you had something ingrained in you from a very early age to keep moving forward. You weren't afraid to do things, whereas there are so many of us that I'm not going to try something because I may fail at it. But it sounds like, even though in the back of your head, you may have been afraid to do certain things or think you couldn't, you still said, I got to do it. Because if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And you know what? I want to be the one to do it. And we all have that ability. But the interesting part is we all have that same fear of failure. And your parents or somebody in your community had to have been that backbone for you in some way that encouraged you. You know what? Even if you fail, brush yourself up and keep going forward. So who
Yeah.
was it in your life that was that supportive?
My mother was like even in school, like, because it was kind of strange. There was like what happened to me when I was 13. I used to study a lot, but it just went in one ear and out the other. And I think it was down to the teacher, because in one history, I was 13. I got, uh, I don't know, was it 18% in a history exam? And in front of 30 people, because that's what the size of the classes were, he said, my grandmother would do better and she's been dead 10 years. And I mean, you can, yeah. I'd laugh, I know, but like to do that to a child, and of course, then you're mocked for that. And children, they don't realize what they're doing. But I was 3 years with that teacher, and I kind of wasn't doing great in English and other stuff. And I wanted to leave school. At 15, I was like, I just want to start working. And my mom was like, no, you're staying there. She was like, no, you're staying. So then I realized if I want to go into college, I can't be getting these grades. I need to change it. But I got a different history teacher, and I started getting 100% in all my exams. And I got an A in, which is, there's no A plus or anything, it's just an A in the state exam for history. So from being the worst in the class to the best, down to a teacher. And that happened with a lot of subjects with me. Same with maths, I went either top or bottom. And even like when I went into, like when I was kind of doing the last few years, I was only average, but the teacher wasn't great. And when I was in college, it was a higher level of maths, and they all were on honors level. And I wasn't, I was a pass level. And I ended up being the top of that because the teacher was brilliant. So, like, a lot of the time, people are kind of putting their kids to the school and just letting them off. You need to be asking what they're teaching them and what way they're talking to them, because some people, they got into teaching at a certain level and then they just began to hate life. And you need to know what they're saying. I mean, constantly checking my child, like what, and I'm watching them and how they're interacting with them. But most people, it's like a babysitting service. They don't even ask what their children are doing. And you
Right.
don't know, are they being traumatized from the school? Because most of them won't say nothing. They're too embarrassed.
It's interesting because the teachers who I connected with, I obviously did much better in class. Um, I went to college for 2 years, and at the end of the 2 years, um, I just thought I had hit my peak, and my parents didn't want to spend any more money because I had struggled through those 2 years. But I went back to school 40 years later, and there was a difference. I wanted to really learn this time, and I connected with my professors to the point that not only did I finish my bachelor's degree, but I went on for my master's because I was so excited to like pull in all this information. And I find when I work with individuals that as long as there's a communication, you don't have to agree, but as long as you can communicate and you find that vibrancy, you can do a lot of things. And that's what it seems that you've been able to do. And that's what you give back to your clients as well. Hell, you may have tripped along the way, but guess what? You're not going to let that bother you.
No, absolutely. And like just as we're talking there, and I was thinking like in the college, the diploma that I did, there was 70 people. There was like 2 classes for in the first year. By the third year for the diploma, there was only 12 of that original 70 because you failed one subject out of say 9 and you were gone. And they were doing physics and different things that you'd never use for the rest of your life unless you wanted to go down that route. But that's the way it worked. And then when I think I was like working when I did the diploma for applied project management, and there was about 30 people in as well. That was in University College Cork, and it was part-time, but I wanted to do it. I wanted to learn. I was applying while I was actually learning. And not everybody passed the thing, but to do the PMP, you need 70% to pass that. Only 3 of us out of the whole class decided, I think I can do that. And me and another guy actually passed it. So I remember that was a kind of nice achievement. And when I go back to the shyness, I did another project management course and I won the first class award or something like that. And they were going to present me inside the thing, and I was too embarrassed to go, so they just had to post it to me. So imagine that you win an award in something, and I didn't go because I knew I'd have to be standing up in front of the people. And I give it, it's at home with my mom. I gave it to my mom, beautiful crystal with my name on it and everything, in first class award. But like, just basically what I'm saying is you can be the worst at something or you can be the best at something, and it's like what you love.
And it's interesting as you talk about project management. I worked for a company about 15 years ago. I was totally surprised when they hired me because I really didn't think I had the skill sets they were looking for. But, they made me this great offer. I went to worked for them for a little over a year. I learned so much about management. I was sitting there just absorbing it. And the reason being is because they believed in me. All of a sudden, I started believing in me. And so I was so ecstatic that has helped drive me forward. It's when they say be around like-minded people, there's so much truth in that. Too much of the time we're with those negative people and they convince us that we can't do certain things. When you're around like-minded people and they help you see that maze, that, okay, you're staring at the wall, turn around, take a couple steps back, turn to the right, turn to the left. You can keep moving. So
Absolutely.
you've done all these wonderful things. And now you have this podcast for somebody who didn't think he could publicly speak. And you speak and you interview and you coach. What is the thing that really keeps you going? What is the thing that excites you the most?
So the first part, it was always about the awakening, but I knew to kind of start on this, I kind of was aware I'd be attacked and I needed to kind of learn my skill. So the first one I done was the speaking podcast. And because of the Toastmasters, I had a lot of people that I could interview and I kind of built from there. Then I done the meditation podcast. And because when I lost everything, and I mean, I lost everything, a lot of stuff, I just I done a 6 phase meditation thing that I came across, and it was kind of just thinking what you're grateful for. And it was because when you're thinking of the negative and thinking of the lack, you're just attracting that. So when you start thinking of, okay, I'm grateful for the hug from my child, I'm grateful for, the cup of coffee in the morning, I'm grateful my friends are there for me, then you start attracting that. And the other one was the act of forgiveness. And I think this one saved me because like with a lot of the stuff I was doing, some of it was down to builders, doing fraudulent things. It was just I have had over 100 court cases, and you have hatred for that as well, like in hatred towards the banks, the way they lied and just the different people. So then I started going through a process of forgiving, and some are easy because you just kind of, and some are harder, and you just start thinking and thinking. And there was a few I couldn't. And what I did is I brought him back to the child, and I said, we have unconditional love for a child. Everybody just awes when they see a baby. A baby's just so beautiful. And then I said it was external forces that created the person that hurt me. It was like they could have been abused, they could have had alcoholic parents. It could have been that their parents were working so hard they didn't actually watch who they were hanging around with and they just went down the wrong road. And when I was able to do it that way, I gave full forgiveness. But it was like it was me that got the freedom because like the memory of pain poisons us, so we're putting it in our body as we're thinking. And like by even telling the story or reliving what I went through, it doesn't hurt. Whereas at one stage it was real pain. And I know that a load of people go through, bankruptcies, foreclosures and stuff like that, and it hurts. But when you can actually forgive and just forget, it's you that gets the freedom. And from that, then I was able to move on. So with what I want to do is like what gets me passionate is like one, I understand the power of the voice. So if you want to make change in the world, you could have good motivation, but unless you can kind of get your message across, no one's going to follow you. The meditation helps you keep calm and just relax. And it's nothing to do with religion or anything. And I've got meditations from 1 minute to 2 hours. And I also have discussions on all different things on it, just to educate people. And what I say is you just find what you like. So a lot of it is like down to mindfulness. Like I tell, if someone's playing golf and they're just in the zone or they're fishing, that's to me, that's like meditation because some people look at someone saying, how can you fish for 4 hours, fly fishing or whatever? They're present. They're not thinking of business, their worries or anything. That's their happy place. So you find your happy place, whether it's painting, whether it's playing darts, whatever it is, you find your happy place and make sure you do that. Don't think I'm too busy to do that. When you're too busy and you're stressed, that's when you do it. That's when you say, I'm 100% doing this. Next one was the Learn Polish podcast. So I basically that's got millions of downloads, and all of my podcasts have been number 1 in a lot of countries. But like I, I was struggling with the language, and everyone is trying to push the grammar and everything. I don't really want the grammar. I just want to have conversations. So the way I done it is like 5 to 10 minute episodes. So I'm the student. My ex-wife is the teacher, and basically we have a child together. I have equal custody, so we had a good relationship to actually do that, and people liked it. I'd say go to the mechanic, and what things would you ask from a mechanic? You go to a dentist, what's a filling? What's this? What's that? And it's the things people need instead of kind of where you go to school and they're just telling you things like when I came to Poland, people were saying, yeah, the 16 tenses, simple present, simple past. And I was like, what's that about? I said, you need past, present, and future. Forget about the other stuff. And people would be studying for years and they could write perfectly, but they panic when they had to speak.
Right.
So I do it the way that I feel is, and like my son, I mean, he's Polish, but he's getting top marks in English because I'm teaching him what to do. Like I was getting books, I was reading books with him because I read 100 books. I said, let's do a challenge. So I bought him books and he read 100 books as well. And it was a case of if we were watching like The Simpsons or something like that, I put it in English. It was like in English. And now he prefers that. So like just small little things. So for the language, so even for kids, sometimes people don't want to watch cartoons and things. If you just say you can watch cartoon, but watch it in Spanish. If they're to learn Spanish or something like that, and it might be hard at the start, but in the end, they don't realize the skill set that they're getting, and they'll benefit from that. So I eventually did the awakening, which is exposing fraud and corruption, but with solutions, because I don't want it to be doom and gloom, because there's enough of that there with the news and everything. So it's always, what can we do to make it better? And I've had like Mickey Willis on the show. I've had Dr. Peter McCullough. I've had a lot of famous people on the show, and that's in the 0.5% as well, and it's doing well. And then the fifth one was the crypto podcast. So I could see, because I was kind of dabbling in crypto, I could see there was so much fraud in that, scams, rug pulls, and everything. And I was like, I need to expose this because most people don't know. They're kind of just following someone that's saying, hey, you need to get
Right.
into this. And I didn't want to put it into the awakening, even though it's kind of, crosses over, because I said, if anyone's not into blockchain technology, I would only annoy them and lose my existing followers. So that's why I created the separate one. Sometimes I'll do an episode that goes out to 3 shows. So if it's relevant, it goes out to the ones that are relevant. And I think it got to 1%, top 1%. I think it's 1.5 at the moment. It kind of fluctuates. But the last one then is the Podfather. And it was a client to call me that because I got him on over 100 shows. And he says, "You're the Podfather." And I just said, "Oh, that's great." So the logo looks like with the hands
Right.
coming down, but it's holding the mic. And I've only, I think, 8 episodes out. I need to get more out. But they're getting 100% listenership on them. Like I go into the analytics and I'm keeping them short intentionally, but I'm showing things like the green screen. The green screen, if you're watching on video behind me, and just showing how to do it, talking about QR codes. I want podcasters to succeed because when I know corruption, the media is just regurgitating lies across. And like the media's 5 corporations own the media. So they just tell people what to do. Whereas when you've got independent podcasters like yourself, like you have decent conversations with people, they're sharing their story, and I believe it lands on the person when they need it. And it's never about the numbers because I'll explain about the numbers. The first time when I was doing the speaking, I was trying to get to 100 total views, and I was at 97. And I was in the Toastmaster meeting going, "Hey, did you download it? Did you download it?" Then it kind of became 1,000. And I remember when I had a few shows at that stage combined. When I hit 1 million, it was kind of like, it wasn't about the numbers. It was always about the message. And when I'm talking to people, because sometimes people, they might have 10, they might have 20 is their average. But if you went into a room and 20 people turned up, those people would be delighted to go into a room and talk to 20 people. And they come back next week, maybe 2 left, but there's another 2 or 3 come along. You would keep going to that room as long as they're there to listen to you. But
Exactly.
because people are comparing themselves to Joe Rogan and all these top people that have massive teams behind them, they think they're a failure, and they're not. And like, all it takes is one person to reach out to you, or when you meet them. Like what I found is I'd go to an event. There wasn't that much comments. I go to an event and people come up to me and go, "I listened to every episode. I love this one. I love this one." And I realized that I was guilty of that as well. I'd be listening to stuff on YouTube and everything. I'd never comment or give a thumbs up, just enjoy it. So then I became conscious of, if I like something, comment on it or just give a thumbs up and stuff like that. So basically what I'm saying for those listening to this, for you, they should go in, give a review, give a thumbs up, and if they believe it would benefit somebody, to share it, because that then gets the algorithms to start pushing it out to more people, and that's why then
Exactly.
you'll get more listens. But most people, they don't ask. I mean, that's one thing that I did from the start. I always ask. I always say, "Give me a thumbs up, 5-star rating." And now what I'm saying is, if you don't agree with what I said, that's okay. As long as you're respectful, the comment stays there. We're open for a debate. But if you're abusive, I just report it and
Right.
delete it.
Exactly.
I've seen some really, like hurting people hurt. So that's, I never attack or respond. And I see people doing that as well. So whatever you're doing, if you're podcasting or whatever you're doing and you're engaging, don't put your energy into the negative people, because it's like talking to the wall. You will never get a good result from it. So if you think you're going to get into a debate and change their mind, you're not going to do it. There's people in the States and all over the world, they have different political opinions, and they're fighting with each other because of that. Like, it's like, why? It's just like it never happened before. So, don't let that happen.
Well, and one of the big things that I've learned since I've been podcasting for a little over 10 years, people will say to me, "Well, why do you do it?" And a lot of it is, I do it for me, because when I'm having this conversation with you, I'm picking up on things that might help me. Maybe not today, but you know what? I put those into my toolbox. And when something comes along, I can go to that toolbox and remember that this is what you did. Now, I may not do it the exact same way. So, how can I tweak it to help me? And I've had individuals say to me, "Well, what are your numbers?" I don't look at my numbers. To be honest, I don't look at any of them. What I look at is when somebody connects with me and says, "Can you tell me a little bit more?" Or, "Who was that guest you had on? Because they really were speaking to me." And then I can refer them back. That's why I think so many of us do this. It helps us be our most authentic selves. and be the best version of ourselves each day. You know,
Oh,
the days that
definitely.
I don't have a podcast, I typically will go on and just record myself talking about something. And why? So that I'm the best version of myself that day. Because when I go back and listen to it, I want to make sure that I can be proud of what I said. And if I can feel proud of it, then I've made an impact. And sometimes those get no responses at all. In fact, my husband sometimes will laugh at me and he'll say, you know, did anybody listen to that? And sometimes I'll go back and look for him and I'll go, no, it's been a month. Nobody's listened, but I've listened to it and it's helped me. And I know he's listened to it too, because he was sitting in the room when I was recording it. So,
And like you mentioned the numbers actually, because I have a form and everything, but if there's people, they ask me, what's your numbers? I don't have them on, because you need to be coming from the place of heart. Like, I was going on shows in Pakistan. There's a guy called Rohan Alawala. He's helping young people. I've often went on shows with people that were 13. Like, their numbers were tiny. I didn't care. It was like I was just helping them to get the experience, but also just one person listen. Even if there's one person listens and they get something of benefit, or as you said, could be a couple of years later, but it's embedded. They've listened, and it, sometimes you think you created the thought yourself. I mean, where do we get our thoughts? It could be from all the information we've gathered over the years, all the books we've read. It's hard to know. So, like, yeah, I'm with you on the numbers. Like, it's like, not don't let that be the driving force.
so if you could give somebody your best words of wisdom now, how they can live their most best version of themselves each day, because that's what it appears that you're doing. You're learning languages, you're reading, you're supporting your son, you still have a working relationship with your ex-wife, things that so many people would say, I just couldn't do any of those things. How do you do it?
I think it's about passion with what you do. Just main thing is, don't do things you hate. You can outsource things that you don't like. And, like we talked about people earlier, like, sometimes there's toxic people and they suck your energy. Like, when you're younger, you kind of just tolerate it and you just say, this is what it is. As soon as you just say, I'm no longer tolerating this, you're out of my life, you never regret it. I am surround myself with people that I love. I mean, I have very close relationships with a lot of people, and some people that I've met through courses and stuff like that, and we're just phoning each other. I have good support, and I think that's important as well, because sometimes people, they get just too deep into something, and they make sure you've got your friends. You don't have to, you can do a Zoom call. You can just even just pick up the phone, have a 10-minute call, just stay connected to people. And that's important. With me, it's like, I don't believe in voting, because I don't think they're serving us. And I think if you give person the vote, you're saying you represent me. There's not one person that I actually believe would represent me better than I can represent myself. So I don't give them that power. So I started studying sovereignty, common law, and things like that. And I realized the power of the signature. And when the corruption of how they write you, like they'd say, Mr. Roy, all capitals, calling and stuff like that. And it's like, that's not me. That's the corporate entity. I'm the living soul, Roy. And when you start understanding that, you have so much power. They back off, because all these people, whether they're judges, whether they're policemen, if they're corrupt, if they're beating up people in peaceful protests, and that happens in Ireland, we've seen it in the States, in the UK, it happens everywhere.
Right.
They're not representing the people like they should. So you don't give them power. I mean, I have shouted at judges because I knew they were corrupt. You know what they done? They put their head down and nodded. When you stand up to tyranny, it's not that they'll beat you. You just know, just do it in a nice, polite way. You don't have to abuse anyone, but just know that nobody has power over you. And I think, if you're asking me what's the most important thing, is when you realize you were born free and you're a free person and nobody can control you, then that's freedom itself. And then you start making better decisions on your health and everything you do.
So how can my listeners find you? Because we want to put that in the show notes so that they can follow your podcast and, even reach out to you if they have any questions.
Yeah, no problem. It's a bio.link/podcaster. I've got all my social media there. I connect with people on LinkedIn, no problem. I'll always do a connection, and all my podcasts are there, as well as my coaching and everything that I'm doing. It's always updated on that.
Well, I'm so glad you were able to join us today, and you've invigorated me a little bit because my day was going a little bit slow, and now it's like I've got a lot of things to think about. And I'm going to go listen to a podcast or two. So have a great day. I
Thanks
appreciate
very
you.
much, Karen. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.